Okay, well, welcome to this therapeutic class. And the props we're going to need today are 2 blocks and 3 blankets and a strap. Now, if you don't have blankets, technical yoga blankets, which are just Mexican blankets, you can use beach towels instead, just something like a bigger towel or a big bath towel. So how we're going to set this up, we're going to set up for Baddha Konasana. We're going to start with 2 blocks and just move these blankets. You're going to make sure that one block is in this mid-height position and another block is going to be at the highest position. And so their placement is going to be one for the spine and one for the head. Okay. Now what you can do with your first blanket is unfold it. So it's about this wide. In the Iyengar vernacular, it's more of a shoulder stand fold. Now this is just basically about 1/4 to 1/2 of your total mat size. So you start with that, and then if you place it on the side, like you can see with the multiple edges facing away from you, the tassels facing away from you, and the single edge facing towards you, you're going to fold it just simply in half. And make sure that there's no wrinkles, and it's all nice and flush. Okay, and so you're going to have to play around with how close these blocks are, but obviously they should be in service of the total length of your torso. And we'll put this blanket here just to create a little bit more cushion so we can spend just a little bit more time, and keep the other blankets or towels close to you so that you can reach for it and use it when you need it, if you need it. Okay, so what we're going to start with is just sitting on the floor. You're going to open up your belt, and first you're going to put the belt on kind of like you're putting on a shirt. And make sure that you draw the loop open pretty wide. And then keep the buckle close to you, but not directly over the feet. So let's look at how this is going to go. Starting with your feet together. So feet in butterfly position, legs in a butterfly position. You're going to place this strap over the back of the body, over the top of the pelvis, basically, which is where the lower back ends. And if you think about pushing the belt down as far as it can go towards the floor. So if you put it on like a shirt and you just push it down, eventually the upper thighs will stop the belt from going down. And that's basically where you want the back of the strap to be aligned. It's going to be aligned with the top of the pelvis or your sacrum area. And so you're going to put the other end of the loop between your legs and over the feet. So they have to go over the feet. And you can always think of it as under the feet. So as you can tell, the belt is wrapping around close to the floor. Now I have my buckle with the tail end of the belt facing me. And you'll see why that's the case for a reason. So in a moment, you're going to draw your heels a little bit closer and then see if you could just reinforce the tightness of the belt in order to support this setting of your legs. And you'll have to, as you tighten the belt, and that's why I wanted you to put the buckle close to you with the tail facing you, so that when you tighten it, you're actually pulling it in towards you to make sure that happens. So you're gonna, as you tighten that one side of the belt, that side where the buckle is going to be a little bit tighter. So just make sure that you carry the slack from the other end to the tighter end to make it just a little bit more uniform. Okay, you don't need your heels all the way up at the sitting bones. All right, so you're going to slowly start to lie back, and you might have to do this a couple times, but as you lay yourself down, you want your head to eventually end up on this other block. And so it might require you to just scoot down a little bit, which is not a problem. You'll keep the other blankets close by, or the other towels, like I said, close by. And just make sure that you don't feel like your extension here in the chest and the ribs is being accentuated too much. Okay? So you want to feel comfortable. So one thing you can do to navigate around this is you can actually come back up, and you can set this mid block, first block, down to its lowest height. And just make sure everything is centered again. And so you'll see a difference in how my chest and how my ribs extend out once I've reset the block. And again, I'm just going to scoot down a little bit to make sure that everything feels a little better contained. Now we're not finished. So I have a nice and satisfactory placement of my torso, my head. Now we have to look at the legs. And so what you want to actually have is enough lift in your head and enough of a tilting down of your head, of your chin, so that you don't have to actually lift your head, but you can just glance down and see the wall that's just beyond you if you're looking through your legs. And then what I want you to look for at that point is you turn your eyes to see the right knee and you turn your eyes to see the left knee. Now, with respect to the wall that's past your knees, you'll see that your right knee is coming up a little bit higher on where it comes up in reference to that wall, as opposed to your left knee, or vice versa. One of them is always going to be a little bit different. And that speaks to just different asymmetries in the body, and especially the asymmetrical form of flexibility that most of us have. So what we want to do is not push down the knee that's a little bit higher, but we actually want to prop up both legs, but actually the knee that's lower, the thigh that's lower, actually pull that up or push that up with an object so that the knees are at the same level. So this is where your blankets and or towels or even blocks might come in handy. And if you're going to use blocks for this, it'd be better to probably use the softer blocks, not like wood or cork blocks that you're going to be using here for your chest and your whole back. So you fold a blanket either like this, or you can just simply roll it. Either way, it just gives you a nice little buffer. And then you're going to lift up your thigh and set the blanket right under the thigh. And when you relax it, just again, glance down and look if the left knee is as high as the right knee. Now, if you overshot it and the left knee is now higher, you can take the blanket a little further out to the side. Okay, and so now it looks like it's about the same height. So what I'm going to do on the other side is the same thing, just to make sure that the legs are actually propped up. And the most important thing is that, of course, they're at the same level, but it's not less important to make sure that the legs are still supported. What you want to avoid is just having your legs fall apart and at their end range of your hip flexibility. Because what happens at that point is as you relax your legs and you let your thighs fall open, what's going to be preventing them from opening more is not going to be your muscles, because your muscles are relaxed, but it's going to be the next structure in line, and that's going to be your tendons and ligaments. And we don't want to do a long restorative posture and open up a joint to just have it be supported only by its own passive tissue structure, because that can create more joint laxity, and we don't want joint laxity. We want to build flexibility in the muscles, but we actually want to keep the joints nice and contained. Stable is the word. So there's one more thing left. Once you get your legs propped up, notice how your belt is tied around your pelvis, low back, and feet. So what this is going to allow us to do is it's going to allow us to create a little bit more length in the lower back. And this entails just 2 steps, or it's just like an extended 1 step. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift my pelvis up a little bit by pressing down with the feet. As I lift my pelvis, I'm going to actually try to push my feet away from me, which is going to catch the belt. And as I push my feet away from me, the other end of the belt here is going to pull this top side of the pelvis down. And so I can even assist with my elbows. I'm going to push, lift my pelvis just a little bit. And then as I push my feet away from me, the top of the pelvis lengthens down in a movement called a posterior pelvic tilt. It's really important to understand the difference between an anterior and a posterior tilt and their respective roles in different postures. Okay, so once you've set that, you can again Take a look at your thighs and make sure to reorganize things so that they're symmetrical. And then bring your arms out to the sides with your palms facing up. And then just simply close your eyes and relax. Allow everything to get heavy. It is, for all intents and purposes, a very unusual, a very foreign posture as far as the body is concerned, as far as all the variety of postures that you've spent your life in, from sitting to walking to standing to lying down. And so all these postures that we take on every day of our life, they are continuous. They're repetitive. And because they're repetitive, it allows the body to make kind of a habit of them. The body appropriates their various positions and alignments and actions, and it actually becomes part of the resume of movements that you're capable of. And so your body makes a habit out of all these various postures. So when you change the posture of your body by placing yourself in a posture like this, not only do you start to work against the physical and mechanical elements of postural habits, but you actually start to work against the neurology and psychology of what it means to have a habit. And we have very sophisticated nervous systems that we've evolved over the hundreds of thousands of years that Homo sapiens have existed. And if you want to trace it back even further to that, to proto-hominids and all other predecessors in our primate line, we've actually been evolving our nervous system for millions of years. And its sophistication, as far as we're concerned here for yoga, comes down to what is provoked in the nervous system by what kind of posture. And you will never find somebody that is bereaved or depressed or afraid or in shock standing very tall with their chest open and exposed in a celebratory posture. That doesn't happen. Nor do you see a person that does feel like they're celebrating or has somehow accomplished something or has victored in a sport. Will you ever find them in a posture that's slumped and hunched over? And so our pose and our states of mind, which is really our state of the nervous system, have become married. They become integrated. So what happens when we put ourselves into any yoga posture for an extended period, we are not only just communicating to the muscles, bones, and joints, which we definitely are in a very good, big way, we're also starting to communicate something to the nervous system. And to put it simply, we're saying, I'm taking the posture of happiness. I'm taking the posture of confidence, of self-esteem, of joy, of courage even. And when you place yourself in that kind of pose, especially when it's a restorative practice for an extended period of time, you allow your nervous system to hardwire the state that is concomitant to that posture. In our case now, being confidence and joy. And so as you let yourself relax into this pose, what I'm not saying that you should do, or that is a requirement of the posture, is that you begin to invoke those feelings of courage and joy and bravery, but actually just allow nothing but pure relaxation to settle you. Even go as far as completely removing all expectation of this posture manifesting those states that we talked about. Just allow things to configure to the props underneath you. Allow your whole body in a way to kind of mold. And so the more you relax, the better your body will mold to the forces that are provided to the props. You can think of props as simply the extension of the element of earth. And in the traditions of yoga, the earth element is really the primary, most gross element that everybody knows and can come into contact with. It is really the definition of tangible. It is the fact that there is structure to your body and structure to the world around you that is dependable. And so when you prop yourself up, all you're really doing is you're basically taking the earth and you're reshaping it so that when you lay down in this position, your body doesn't have to come meet the earth completely, but it's as if the earth is kind of rising up from below to meet your body where it is. And why I'm saying this is to see if it can help induce a little bit better surrender onto the props. Because again, for most of us, this posture is pretty foreign. And when something is foreign, we have a little bit of reservation. We have a little bit of apprehension about it because it's foreign, because we don't know what it is. We haven't had much experience with it. And anything that is more foreign to us, we usually tend to provide a little bit more hesitation or apply a little bit more hesitation towards it. And find yourself melting. And we all know how cheese melts when it's warmed up. And some good melted cheese will actually take the shape of whatever's it's on top of, whatever's underneath it. So let your body be just like that, be just like this sense of warm melted cheese, where you're just giving yourself over to the forces underneath you. And so what I mainly just described is the neuropsychological end of placing the body in the posture. But the reason that structurally and physically a posture like this is so beneficial to start our practice with is because in the context of the torso and the upper body, it allows your abdomen and your chest to open. And if you think about it in context, the shape of your torso right now is almost completely antithetical to the posture that we all tend to spend most of our day in, most of our days. And so usually that's sitting, it's either sitting in the car or sitting at work. And even if we're not sitting, if you pay attention even just to the way that you walk down the street, it's not often that people walk with their chest extended and their shoulders back and their abdomen exposed. Usually we all tend to be a little bit kind of hunched and slumped over. And a hunched and slumped over posture restricts the ability to have a balanced body, a healthy, well-functioning body in two ways. One is it closes up the chest. And when the chest is closed up, as well as the abdomen, it removes the ability to breathe as functionally as we need to, as functionally as we've evolved to. Because most of the movement when we inhale and exhale happens at the front of the body. We inhale, our belly expands, and then our chest expands. And when we exhale, our chest and our belly contracts. And so by placing the body in this kind of open posture, open torso posture, we're in a way placing a little bit more of a kind of a welcome mat to the effortlessness of breathing. Because if you're hunched over, you have to work really hard to get a big inhale. And then secondarily, the other benefit of this posture is that by opening up the abdominal area, not only are we serving the respiratory structure of our torso by letting the abdomen expand and contract fully, we're actually kind of unlaboring, uncompressing the organs that are in our viscera, right? Our digestive system especially can suffocate with a bad posture. And there is a pretty large incidence of digestive disorders nowadays that some experts have actually hypothesized is the outcome of poor posture. And so when you open up your abdomen this way, you bring space back to those internal organs. And then a digestive system is just going to be a part of it, but really every organ within your torso is now allowed to move a little bit better, to have a little bit more space so that its function is unrestricted and unhindered. This is a great pose to also finish your day with, other than just starting the class. And this is a great pose, as Mr. Iyengar taught, for any kind of digestive ailments. And this could be anything from you just simply overate and you feel a little bit uncomfortable, so this exposes the torso and lets that digestive process happen a little bit more smoothly. And it's also said to be beneficial to other digestive issues or challenges. So you could be even in the aftermath of, say, having a food poisoning, eating something that didn't agree with you. And everything functions better when it has space to actually function. And this is the number one untold, unacknowledged secret in the entire practice of yoga, which is the ability for the body to have space, the ability to function better when you give your muscles, your joints, your nervous system, and your digestive system, everything, the room to do its thing. Because when anything is confined, its function becomes that much more insubstantial. ineffective, inefficient. And so now we spent a pretty good amount of time in this pose. One thing you know is, you can tell is if it feels like your hips and your thighs are getting fatigued within the first 5 minutes, it probably means that you need to prop up your thighs a little bit higher. Your thighs are a little bit too low. Now, this is not the pose to work in creating deep hip flexibility in. This is just an open pack position for the hips, which is the least compressed position for your hip joints. And it allows your torso to open for all those reasons that I just mentioned. So there is no good reason that you should ever feel restless or like your body's starting to kind of get stale in it if you propped it up correctly. So now as we're going to start to come out, we're going to come out slowly and step by step. So first thing I want you to try to do is loosen up the belt buckle. This is where keeping the belt buckle close to you would have really come in handy. So see if you can use one hand to loosen up your belt buckle, and whatever belt buckle you're using, I'm going to say this, try to say this a little more clearly. There's that end that the tail wraps around, the tail that you pull on to shorten it. Now, if you just pull up that end of the buckle and try to pull that end of the buckle towards the other end of the buckle where the other side of the belt's attached to, your belt will loosen up, no matter what belt you have. So now that you loosen up your belt, you don't have to take it off completely, just enough to make sure that you can pull your thighs up. So you can open your eyes at this point, and I don't want you to use your leg muscles to pull your legs up. You're going to grab your thighs from the outside and then just close your legs using your own hands, your own arm strength. Okay, now still keeping the knees bent. You're going to hold on to either the back of the knees, the back of the thighs, excuse me, or the front of the knees. But I want you to use your arms mostly to pull yourself up. Now, if you get stuck somewhere along the way of coming up, usually means your knees are too bent and your feet are too close to you. So if you just have your legs a little bit further, you might need to hold lower down the thighs. You're going to curl your head and then just try to pull yourself up mostly with your arm power. And then once you're sitting upright like this, I want you to give yourself a leg hug, almost like you're doing a sitting child's pose. So you pull yourself in and then even drop your head. Now, if you have any kind of lower back pathologies that you need to work around, just take it easy on how much you're rounding, especially in your lower back. Other than that, just round your head and feel free to round as much as you like. Take a couple more breaths and see if when you inhale, you can get that inhale movement delivered more to your back body, to the back of the torso, both at the lower end and at the top end where your ribs are. Okay, and then so what we're going to do first is the blankets or the blocks that held your legs up, you're going to move those over to the side. Get them out of your way. And you're going to move the belt off to the side, but not so far that you can't reach it. We're going to readjust this setup, the blocks. You'll put your blocks off to the side. And then just have one blanket, so you can use the one that was on top of the blocks. Just put that right on the mat where your head is going to go. And then just simply lay right down. Make sure that your head is supported on the blanket and not your shoulders. So if you find that your shoulders are being pushed up by the blanket, all we really want is the skull to have its support. Okay, and we're going to start with a nerve glide. So that entails bending your right leg, lifting the foot up, lifting the leg up, and then interlace your fingers behind your right thigh. And you can look, if you like, just to make sure that your thigh is completely vertical so that your knee is directly above the hip. We're going to start with an inhale where you don't do anything else. And as you exhale, you're going to start to kick your right heel up in order to straighten the knee. Now, this first time around, we're going to do this back and forth, or even just maybe the entire time. You might not be able to get your leg straight, or if when you get your leg straight, you feel pain in your low back, don't go quite that far. And so on a level scale of 1 to 10, of that stretching intensity that we all know, we want to stay for therapeutic reasons at about a level 6 or 7. So if when you're straightening your leg, you start to hit that 7 about here before your knee straightens, then that's where you're going to stop. And as you develop your flexibility, you're still going to be able to find that level 7 of intensity, but now the 7 can become a straight leg. So as you inhale, bend the knee, keep holding your hands around the thighs. You exhale, re-extend the knee. Inhale, bend. You can close your eyes from this point on. Exhale, straighten. And do this for about 4 more times on your own. And as you keep inhaling, make sure that you really invite your abdomen to expand. And as you exhale, stay with it, watch it closely so that you don't stop exhaling until you're certain your exhale is complete. Again, inhale, bends the knee. Exhale, straightens the knee. And about 2 more like this. Inhale. Exhale, notice if your flexibility is evolving a little bit and allowing your knee to straighten a little bit more. Inhale. And on the last one that you exhale and straighten your leg, keep your leg straight. And this is going to come into use for the second side. Make sure that you adjust your hands either closer to the knee or closer to the hip so that your elbows don't have to bend too much, because we want to try to keep action for now out of the biceps. So you're going to keep your knee straight. What straightens your knee is going to be your quadriceps. These are always the main muscles that keep your leg straightening, that make your knee, that allow your knee to move. And we need the quadriceps in order to release the hamstring. So the more that you can engage your quadriceps as your knee straightens, that's the degree to which you can start releasing your hamstrings. So what you did with the knee, the nerve glide, we're going to now do with the ankle. So watch your knee, make sure it's straight. You're going to inhale, point your toes, try to curl your toes into the sole of your foot. Exhale, uncurl. Inhale, point. Imagine making a fist with your foot. Exhale, let your foot kind of blossom, let the toes spread. Do that 4 more times. Inhale. Exhale. And do the next 3 on your own. Now, the benefit of doing this nerve glide, which the technical name for is neural mobilization, is that we go in and out of a movement, really in and out of a stretch, in order to allow the nervous system to start adapting to the stretch. And this has shown some great promise in research because this is a dynamic way of building up flexibility. And it's especially good for unwinding any muscular or neural adhesions that you might have somewhere along the back of your legs. Okay, and then switch sides, bend the knee, pick up your left leg, interlace your fingers around the back of the thigh, extend your right leg down, and with this right leg, give it some good pressure on the floor. Kick the heel into the ground, press your calf into the ground, keep your left thigh vertical, take a deep breath in, and as you exhale, start to straighten the knee. Inhale, knee bends. Exhale, knee straightens. There we go. Inhale. And exhale. Now, of course, I'm breathing through my mouth. You want to make sure that unless your nose is blocked or clogged for any reason, you're always breathing through your nose. Do the next 4 on your own. See if you notice whether or not there's a difference between the 2 sides, in flexibility, that is. Now, if one leg is more flexible than another, then generally what you want to do in a therapeutic context is work on the side that's less flexible. So what that can look like, and so as you finish off your last one here, keep your knee straight, and now we'll go into the ankle nerve glide. So you inhale, point your toes, Exhale, pull your toes back, kick out through the heel. There we go. Inhale. Exhale. And do that about 4 more times on your own. And you'll notice that there's a temptation to bend the knee when you point and curl your toes, as opposed to when you uncurl and unfold them. So that's where you really want to stay high-toned and vigilant about your quadricep activity. Keep your shoulder blades pulled down to the floor. 2 more. Last one. Okay, so what I was saying, whatever leg you noticed was a little tighter, that's the leg that you want to work on more. So that could be either we work on it twice as long as the other leg, or we just do 2 sets of it. So right now, let's all go back to do a 3rd set. So pick the leg where the hamstring seemed a little bit tighter. So that's going to be the left for me. Right leg goes down. And now we'll just do about 5 more of these. So inhale with the knee bent. Close your eyes and exhale as your knee straightens. And do the next 4 on your own. And the job, really, the role that we play as students in this practice is to start observing with even more care and nuance of even the simplest looking movements. So as you straighten your leg while you're exhaling, the number 1 criteria is to see if you can align the duration of your leg movement exactly with the duration of your breathing, so that neither one happens without the partnership of the other. And this fuses your mind into the project. This makes your nervous system really start to absorb what the mechanisms are of what you're doing. And so there's no way to not pay attention if you have to breathe specifically while moving. This captures your entire being. And this is really one of the central definitions of yoga being union. It's the uniting of the mind to the body. Good. Now when your knee bends, keep the knee bent. And then we're going to do a little bit of a twist, actually. So we're going to first turn over to the left. Make sure that you start laying in a side-lying fetal position, basically. And so for that reason, you're going to have your knees at about hip level or even higher. If you turn your head to the right and look down at your pelvis, you want to make sure from your armpit to your hips, you have a straight line. That means your hips should not be forward of where your shoulders nor back of where your shoulders are. Extend both arms out in front of you. You're going to take an inhale in this position. And as you exhale, start to open your right arm, turn your head so that your nose and your eyes track with the direction of your arm. And as you complete your exhale, send your right arm as far back to the right as you can. But on this first one, hold it for a moment. Make sure that if you cannot feel your right shoulder blade get to the ground, that you absolutely do not force your hand to touch. On the next inhale, come back up right to the beginning of where we started. And then exhale, open your arm right back up and send the right shoulder maybe a little bit closer to the floor. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. This is just like that nerve glide. And take your time to exhale. There's no rush. The slower you breathe, the more connected to your breath you are. Notice if your right shoulder blade can come a little bit closer to the ground. Remember, there's no need to get the hand to touch if your shoulder blade has not. And this is the last one. So as you exhale and open your arm, then we'll keep it here for 5 breaths. And you might have noticed that your thighs were kind of slipping on one another as you rotated and then closed back up. And that's okay. You do not have to keep your knees stacked. It really isn't that important, and there's nothing that you can suffer, no injury that you can suffer by letting your knees slide with respect to one another. The only thing I would challenge you to do in this position is, other than making sure that your shoulder blade gets to the ground before your hand, is challenge yourself to keep turning your head so you can keep your eyes on the same plane as where your arm is. And that way, what you're doing is you're lining up the depth of twist in your torso, in your thoracic spine, with the depth of twist in your neck and head. Let's take these last 2 breaths. Good. Inhale, come right back up, turning back over to the left, and then turn over onto your back, and then we'll turn over to the right side. Again, just double check in your fetal position that your knees are about hip level or higher. Lift your head, look to the left, make sure your pelvis and your hip is in line to the torso. Okay, right arm goes out in front of you, left arm goes on top of it. We're gonna start with an inhale. It's a little bit counterintuitive, but as you exhale, you're gonna lift your left arm and carry it all the way to the left as far as it wants to go. And if the hand doesn't come to the ground, that's okay. Just make sure your shoulder blade tries to. Inhale, you come back up. Exhale, again, you twist open. Inhale. Exhale. 2 more. Big inhale. You can close your eyes from this point already. And as you're exhaling and twisting, carry the lesson from the previous movement. Make sure that you're lining up the length and duration of your breath, last one here, with the length and duration of your muscle movement, your physical movement. Now, this last one that you open up on, and again, you might be able to see it a little bit more clearly when you can look at the screen, is do not force your hand down to the floor if your shoulder blade hasn't touched. Just make sure that you keep reaching your shoulder blade down. And one great way you can use your right arm for this is push your whole right arm into the floor. You can even make a fist and kind of push the side of your fist down. And as you slam your right arm into the floor, this gives you a little bit more thrust into helping you bring the left shoulder blade down. But again, if the shoulder blade doesn't touch, it's perfectly okay to have the whole arm float. What we're doing by doing it this way, as far as the arm goes, is we're preventing any hyperflexibility in the shoulders. Because if you force your hand down to the exclusion of your shoulder, you're actually starting to prolapse the front of the shoulder joint, which is not something the shoulder joint really needs. The front of the shoulder joint is actually the least stable part of it. So we don't need to make it more flexible. We actually need to reinforce it with some good strength. Last breath out here. Good. Inhale, you're going to turn all the way over to the right again. And then from there, we're just going to come right up onto all fours. And so once you get onto all fours, you don't need your blankets or your blocks or your belt, at least yet. Starting on all fours, make sure that your wrists are in line with the shoulders, right below the shoulders, and your knees are right below the hips. So this is called just a scapular push-up. And you're going to keep your arms straight for this. As you inhale, I want you to just allow your whole torso to descend down towards the floor. So if I was sitting, this is what it would look like. I'm bringing my shoulder blades just straight back like that. But when I'm actually on all fours, I'm not using muscular action. I'm actually just collapsing. I'm letting gravity take me down. Just make sure that your head doesn't hang. Try to keep your neck generally in line with the rest of your spine. Chin just tad elevated, so your gaze lands about 1 or 1.5 feet out in front of your fingertips, okay? So just let yourself collapse down and watch out so that you don't get into the cow position where your whole center torso and your abdomen drops down. I'm gonna pull your front ribs back a little bit so that your spine is straight. Straight meaning have an integrity. And take an inhale in this position. As you exhale, I want you to just press away from the floor. So inhale, you collapse down. Exhale, you uncollapse or you press away. And as we do the next 5 of these, close your eyes again and just start to get used to that movement, which is called protraction and retraction in the shoulder blades. Protraction is when you push away from the ground. Retraction is when you allow yourself to relax and kind of slump back down. And what this does is, if you can tell already, it trains protraction of your shoulder blades. One of the main reasons that people suffer from all sorts of shoulder imbalances, which then create neck imbalances, is there's a lack of strength in this protraction element. The muscle that organizes this movement is the serratus anterior, which is a key muscle for all around shoulder health and shoulder function, period. Right? So you can make this even harder if you take your knees off the ground and do it from high plank. So let's see if you want to do 5 to 10 of these. So you can bring your legs, lift your legs, keep your feet apart. If you want to make it still harder, just do it on one leg and stack the other leg on top of that. So you're going to inhale, collapse down, exhale, push away. Inhale, exhale, and hold with the protraction element of it. Hold as long as it takes you to exhale. It's actually good to have a little bit more effort in, a little bit more sweat in, maybe. Inhale down, exhale, push away. Inhale, exhale. Last one, inhale, exhale, and the knees down. Well done. So from here, let's start with a little bit of a toe sit. So that's going to mean you curl your toes under. And if I was facing the camera, you can lift your knees up even, spread your toes nice and wide. And then as you sit back down, you can start with your knees apart, just to make sure there's a little bit more ease and less tension in your feet. So showing you from the side, you might need to keep a block or a blanket handy for this, just in case. Remember the whole 1 to 10 scale of intensity where you want to stay at about a 6 or 7? So find that placement. And if you're already sitting up with your thighs separated, you might be at a 7 or 8. So to take some of the tension off, one thing you can do is you can separate your thighs. That's one thing you can do. Another thing you can do is keep your thighs closer together, which is what I would suggest, and use a block between your bum and your heels. Or you can also place the block, and again, this is where your thighs have to be together, right underneath your knees, right underneath your shins. So that'll still keep the bend of your toes the way it needs to be without necessarily putting that much pressure that it's intolerable for you. Let's get a little bit of work done on the shoulders. Bring your arms back behind you, bend your elbows, and then hold the opposite elbows. There's going to be a tendency for your torso to want to curl back, almost like it's doing a back bend over your arms. Pull your front ribs back into the arms, and then use the pressure here between your forearms and your torso to pull the front of the shoulders backwards. Relax your jaw, relax your tongue, relax your eyes. Let's take about 3 more breaths. See that you follow through with your exhale to a point where it actually feels like you're scooping it out. Because the better you learn to exhale, the more space you create for the next coming inhale. And it's really the inhale that gives us that life-bearing nutrient called oxygen. Come forward. Okay. So coming back to all fours again, we'll finish off with this. You're going to step your right foot forward between the hands and then come upright. So this is our low lunge. If you need a little padding for your left knee, use your blanket, use anything else you like. I'm going to turn towards the camera just so you can see what I'm asking for. First, make sure that your right foot, your whole right leg essentially, and your left leg are hips width wide. You're not standing on one narrow kind of tightrope beam track. You're not on a balance beam. So you want to make sure that you respect the natural width of your pelvis and hips by setting your legs up accordingly. So you get into this position, and then we're going to take the arms up. Interlace your fingers. Make sure that the tips of your fingers are grabbing on tightly to the backs of the hands. You're gonna first go nice and long up. So you're gonna inhale and reach to try to make yourself a little bit taller. And then as you exhale, start to move over to the right in a little bit of a side bend. Here, depending on your flexibility, if you can go a little bit further to the right, that's gonna carry your weight over to the right, so you have to counterbalance. So one thing you can do is you just heel and toe your right foot, move the right leg over to the right, so that your toes and your thigh face to about like a 1 or 2 o'clock position. And then as you bend over to the side, now you have a little bit better counterweighting so that you don't actually tip over. And you'll feel something going on here on the left side of the torso, right? So just find where your edge is with this. And if you want to go still even a little bit further into the pose, you're going to lunge forward. So looking at it from the side, this is what you'll see. So once I do the side bend and I add, just by letting my pelvis come down a little bit closer to the floor, where my left thigh is coming closer to the ground than my right thigh is. Relax your jaw, push out with the right arm, so that dictates how open and how stretched you start to feel on the left side. Take one more deep breath out. Inhale, come on up, and then arms down, and we'll switch sides. Left foot forward, right knee down. Again, just watch and respect the distance between your feet, respectively. Take your arms up, reinterlace your fingers. Remember, keep the tips of your fingers pressing tightly against the backs of the hands. You're gonna go up nice and long, and then arch up and over to your left. And just see what the difference is on this first side. Like I was saying before, if you have more flexibility, you're gonna have to move your front leg slightly to the left. In this case, having the toes and the thigh angle at about 10 o'clock. And then you can start adding to this by lunging forward. And by the way, if your body is close enough to the ground, you can bring your left hand to the mat. Otherwise, just keep your arm up and keep outputting the reach, that extension upwards with your left arm, so that it gives your right side a nice pull. 2 more breaths. Last exhale. Inhale, come back to center. Bring your arms down. Perfect work. And then grab yourself a block, and we'll finish with this last pose. So it's called Ekapada Supta Virasana. So that's a reclining single leg hero pose. So you're gonna first start sitting on the block in just regular Virasana. To show you from the back what that looks like, I'm framing the block with both ankles, and then I'm just sitting down, okay? Now there's a way that I want you to do this that's gonna be a lot safer for your knees. Once you frame the block, bring your knees and thighs together, and then grab a hold of your left calf for now, and don't turn your left calf, as you might have learned somewhere else. You might have seen somebody do. Actually try to push your calf this way towards the heel. So as you push your calf down, you're gonna sit back on the block, and you can use 2 blocks, of course, if you need to, if that's not high enough. And leaning over to your left hip, gonna step your right foot forward. Okay, so this leg is more like in a lunge position, and this leg is in hero. Look down at your left foot and look at your left knee. Your thigh and your knee have to be uncompromisingly in line to your left hip. Your left inner heel has to be right in line with your left outer hip. So even if you're propped up really high, the outer hip and the inner heel have to be on that same tight plane. Otherwise, you're gonna risk creating a rotation in the knee, and the knees do not rotate nor bend sideways. First thing you're gonna do is lean back onto your hands, Once you lean back onto the hands, press down with your hands just enough to take some of your body weight off of your bum and off of the block, and then do what we talked about before, which is a posterior tilt. One easy way to remember what a posterior tilt is, it's the opposite of sticking your butt out. So you can call that pulling your butt in. So I lift, I pull my butt in, and then when I come back down onto the block, I'm actually sitting on like the midsection of my glutes. From here, you may or may not be able to come down to your elbows and your forearms. And even if you don't, it's totally okay. Just find your own perfect seven. Press with your elbows. Again, lift the pelvis. Do another posterior tilt. Pull your butt in and see if you can land an even higher part of your butt back onto the block. And this is where we'll stay for now. So if you're down on the elbows, make sure that your chest doesn't collapse. Press away from the floor so that your sternum is amplified, but actually let your head gently relax back. Keep your throat relaxed, soft, and open. 2 more breaths. Good job. And slowly coming up, one hand at a time. We're going to come forward on all fours, switch sides, and I'll turn the other way so you can see a little bit better as we review the entry. So grabbing the right calf, push the calf towards the heel as you sit back onto the block. Then lean over to that right sit bone, step your left foot forward. Okay. Again, watch your right knee in reference to the right hip. Make sure it's a straight line. As you go back, your front thigh is going to want to favor sliding out to the side. So you have to watch that. Keep your leg strictly aligned. Make sure the inner heel's aligned with the outer hip. You can even spread your toes using your fingers. But once you do that, press your toenails actively into the floor, which is the same muscles and same actions as when you stand and lift your toes. Now the foot is upside down, they press down. You lean back onto the hands, lift some weight of your body off the block, pull your butt in with a posterior tilt, land it back down. Notice the tension level here. If it permits you to come down to your elbows, do it one elbow at a time. And then from here, press with the elbows, lift your pelvis, and again, pull your butt in, sit with an even higher part of your pelvis down on the block, and then push your elbows into the floor so it's as if you're expelling the chest out of the body, and then let your head gently relax back for a full 5 breaths. We finish off in this pose working on the psoas muscles, the hip flexors and quads, as they are such a common site of tension. They are such a common problem site with anybody that suffers low back pain. And it definitely tends to agitate our peace of mind doing this posture, but we want to be able to reframe these times in our practice, because we can't expect every part of our yoga practice to just be easy and enjoyable. Some things, when we're addressing them in the body, they are uncomfortable by definition. And it's the fact perhaps that we haven't been paying attention to them that now they've stored up a lot of tension, which doesn't feel comfortable when we're actually addressing it. After this last exhale, you're going to press down with one arm at a time, come back up, come forward on all fours, and then get your blanket ready for Shavasana. So you're going to have the same blanket that you had before to support your head. And you could do with your other blanket is unfold it and just make a little roll with it. Okay, so what that's going to look like is you're going to have Shavasana with bent knees. You're going to lay down, make sure that your head ends up on the first blanket nicely. And then you grab this roll, and then you just try to align it so that by the time you straighten your legs, your knees land right on the roll. Place your arms out to the sides with the palms facing up. Slide your shoulders on your back so your chest is exposed. And close your eyes. And Shavasana is very individual, very personal practice. Whether you have 1 minute or 1 hour for it, nothing can circumvent the quality of attention. So the more you relax your jaw, your face, and your throat, you'll actually begin to suspend any other attentional or psychological agitations that have been a part of your day today. Thank you for joining me for this practice. Have a great rest of your Shavasana. Namaste.